Welcome back, everybody. Time to continue on in my very first time playing through the campaign here on Civil War II. It's early May of 1862, and I think I've got all of my orders issued. I didn't do a lot as far as recruitment. I'm still trying to build up those replacements for my existing units. Still trying to get everybody consolidated in my army here, and we'll see how this all works. We're trying to form some kind of an army in northeastern Virginia. We're also trying to pull McClellan back over here in central Kentucky, back over here to Munfordville. But it looks like right now Johnston's army's in between me and him, and there's a second army over here, the Army of the Mississippi. I also have a pretty sizable force under U.S. Grant, and actually the general in command of that right now is Don Carlos Buell, and we've actually now got William Rosecrans, who historically was the other commander of an army. There were basically three armies that were operating in the area in that kind of what was called the Western Theater, but it wasn't quite. So basically, if you're not familiar with history of the Civil War, if you think of it in terms of historical terms, they generally called it the Eastern Theater in the area of Virginia. The Western Theater was Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, that area. And then this area over here would have been the Trans-Mississippi, everything on the other side of the Mississippi. So when I say Western Theater, that's kind of what I mean, are basically McClellan's army and Buell's armies right now. But there were three armies basically operating at the time. There was one under Grant. There was one under Rosecrans. I think that was the Army of the Cumberland. Grant was the Army of the Tennessee. And then you had Buell's Army of the Ohio, at least at this part of history. So we'll go ahead and hit the turn button and see what happens. All right, looks like we're going to have another big battle here between forces under McClellan and forces under Benjamin Chatham this time. So looks like we've got the edge here on this one. I'm going to go ahead and let the AI choose the best option. But we've got a significant numerical advantage, and I had McClellan on a defensive stance because I'm just trying to pull him back. I really didn't want him to engage. Certainly didn't want him to engage Johnston's army. This army here I don't mind so much, especially since it looks like we're going to pretty well wipe them out. So it looks like over here in the east things have cleaned up some. Beauregard's army's up here in Winchester right now, and what we're trying to do is just get all these forces consolidated into a nice big force here. It looks like McDowell has pulled back, so we're going to go ahead and now pull these stacks back as well. And I've got, this is just a bunch of generals here, so I'm just going to move them. But I've got some more consolidating to do to kind of get all this sorted out right now. A lot of these guys are just generals with no command at the moment. Phil Kearny's corps right there. We've got a pretty decent sized army under McDowell, so once we get them kind of replenished and refit, we can maybe in June start moving out towards some action again. But really, honestly, I mainly just kind of want to hold the line here in Virginia for now while I try to make my moves elsewhere. We're going to go ahead and declare a partial mobilization draft. It's going to give me 400 extra conscript companies. Right now I've got plenty of war supplies, plenty of money, but not enough as far as the conscript companies go. And part of that's because of how many replacements I've had to hire. But I think it's time to go ahead and start making our move with Grant. So let's go ahead and take a look over here right on the Mississippi River at the situation. Here's Buell's force. We got Grant's corps and Pope's corps. We got to get some more units into Pope's corps, but Grant's corps is pretty stacked at the moment. So I think we're going to go ahead and take the Western Command. He's a slow mover, unfortunately, but that's just the reality of the situation until we can put Grant in command of an army. So I think we're going to go ahead and march down and see if we can go after New Madrid, Missouri, and then we're probably going to have to make a crossing at some point. So I forgot to check the results of the battles, and you can see this was a Union defeat for General McClellan, but honestly, it worked pretty well because we inflicted more than 50% casualties on the enemy that we were facing. So it didn't go all that bad. We had a slight engagement out in Kentucky or in Kansas, which was a Union victory. So right now what I'm trying to do with McClellan is I've given him orders to try and evade combat. You can see how much down his combat power is. So we're trying to pull him back to get him refit and ready to go and built back up to strength so that we can continue his campaign. Okay, so for the first time, I am maxing out all my rail capacity. So we're going to go ahead and spend some money and some war supplies on increasing the rail pool. I guess I only just do it or don't. I don't know why I kept hitting it like I could do it more often. So that'll increase the rail pool. That's going to help me a little bit. I've also got some conscripts, and I don't seem to be getting my replacements into the Army nearly as quickly as I would like. So rather than continue to do that, I'm going to go ahead and just go back to recruiting additional units. I've already started the process of doing that. And we're going to try to go with the biggest, most powerful units that we can come up with, which they're kind of sorted in that direction. I've already recruited some cavalry and artillery and other things, so I'm just going to start ramping up the infantry units a little bit. And we've got some new ones here in places like New York. The Empire Brigade, Durier's Brigade isn't ready to go, but Empire Brigade is. But we're out. We've got a little bit of rail capacity. We can move that brigade. So we're going to continue to load up in this area as much as we can. All right, we're going to have ourselves a major battle here in Kentucky, and you can see that McClellan got his power back up quite a bit over where it was. So let's see how this battle shapes up. Oh, that's actually a really... Why does McClellan only have 2,500 men? That's really strange. So it's strange. He actually had 31,000 men, but I think what happened was we were pulling back into Mumfordville, and they must have hit like a rear guard or something, because you can see these are the only units that were engaged. The 42nd Ohio Infantry, 43rd Ohio, which is a conscript unit, the 44th Ohio, and the 45th Ohio. And they were basically taking on all of Earl Van Dorn's army. So I think that was just kind of a rear guard action that was happening there. Let's get McClellan's Devil Army here. Get them moved back into this area here, and we will continue to send forces down to merge with them and get them built up a little stronger. All right, we're going to start making some moves in the Trans-Mississippi region. We're going to move Edwin Sumner down to try and take Springfield, Missouri. I think we're going to just kind of sit tight with these folks here. We've got this little incursion happening with this small CSA detachment up here at Fort Smith. I think we can deal with him fairly easily. We're going to send these guys down as well. We'll send both of those forces that way. We've got 2nd Indian HG, so that's kind of cool. We've got some Native American forces working for us now. We're going to send Curtis down to start moving this direction, maybe draw these guys. Stand Watie, a Confederate Native American general, has invaded southern Illinois, so we're going to have to deal with him. So we're going to send our force under John Fremont up from St. Louis to try and deal with those guys if we can. We're going to have to put Fremont on an attack footing. But we're finally getting some movement by Slowpoke Buell over here, who's going to finally move down toward New Madrid pretty soon. Then we're going to have to try to cross over somehow. So you can see my forces made it back into supply, into communication range, and we've saved that army. They've suddenly built back up. We've got, once again, a decent fighting force there, Lew Wallace's corps, which we can now merge up here with the forces under McDowell. We're going to get them there real soon, and I feel much, much better about the situation over here than I did not long ago. We've still got a lot of forces that need to get built back up, but things are looking good right now in Eastern Virginia. Another big battle happening here with McClellan's force in Kentucky, and it looks like it's going to go fairly well for me. It's just interesting that it's such a small force that he's engaging when we know that McClellan's got a pretty powerful army there. I'm not really sure. There, the rest of them finally got into the action. It looked like they must have just connected with kind of a vanguard of my force, and now they're running into the main army. So I think McClellan may be about ready to start advancing again. John Fremont has engaged with Stand Watie's force here in Gilead, Illinois. It looks like it's going pretty well there. So a lot of decent-sized combat is happening now that we're starting to move as we get into the summer of 1862. So let's look at the results. This one was kind of a nothing battle there in Kansas, really. Grant gets into the action for the first time and wins a victory at the Battle of New Madrid. Didn't lose a man, only kind of engaged a small Confederate force there. Edwin Sumner wins the Battle of Springfield, Missouri, so it looks like we're well on our way to being able to take Springfield. We're going to go ahead and I guess he's actually there. I don't know if we need to issue attack orders now to actually besiege the town. We're already besieging it, so that's good. Let's see what else we had here. John C. Fremont wins a victory at the Battle of Gilead Landing over Stand Watie. Took a lot of casualties, but that's okay. Raphael Semmes takes command of the CSS Alabama in Liverpool and outfits her for sea duty, so that's going to be interesting. The Pacific Railway Act. A lot of combat here. McClellan engages Benjamin Chatham and wins a victory at Meade, Kentucky. Loses about 1,000 men, but a significant advantage there. You can see, even though we lost more men than he did. I think McClellan, oh boy, there's a pretty big force there under Albert Sidney Johnston. So they may not be as easy a task as we thought. But I'm hoping that as long as we keep him occupied there, he doesn't have the ability to take us on over here. We're going to have to cross once we take New Madrid. We're going to have to cross over. We're headed into western Tennessee. That's kind of the plan here. There's a defeat at Mumfordville, a small force against Earl Van Dorn. A victory at the Battle of Smith, Kansas. Defeat at Smith, Kansas. Interesting. And a battle in Vincennes, Indiana. Interesting. I used to live near there. So the Confederates are making all these little incursions into southern Indiana, although it looks like some of them have pulled back now because they were occupying a lot of this area over here. So I think we'll just keep McClellan kind of occupying Albert Sidney Johnston as much as we can. Let's look at the situation over here in the east. I've got a decent-sized force in Charleston, West Virginia, kind of keeping all these guys occupied. I don't really plan on moving too much in that area, but it looks like McDowell is kind of being left alone here in Fauquier County, Virginia. This guy's moved up into Maryland. I'm not a fan of that. We might have to move these two forces to come at Theophilus Holmes here. So taking a look now at the force I've got in northeastern Virginia. The Northeastern Virginia Army itself has a force power of 1,500. Phil Kearny's corps has a force power of almost 2,000. Lew Wallace's corps has a force power of 1,700. That's a pretty substantial force that I've got there. So the question now becomes, do I advance the whole thing, or do I sit tight and maybe send one of the corps out to try and deal with these guys up here that are causing me some issues? I don't know exactly what I want to do there. I've also got some units here in Fairfax, Virginia. I might go ahead and move one of these divisions up here to at least get in his way a little bit. We can get them there in 4 days. Let's go ahead and think about a movement south. Actually, yeah, there's no good way to do this because we're going to cross a river no matter what we do. No, whatever I did there, I want to undo it. Darn it. Okay, I've got it all sorted out now. So we're going to go ahead and issue an order to this Northeastern Virginia Army. Synchronize movement. And let's move into Spotsylvania, Virginia. It's going to take 9 days to get there. Let me check and see. It looks like we've already got orders. Once we gave the order to the Army and did synchronized movement, it did issue that order to everyone. So I think that worked. All right, that's going to be our first big move with a pretty substantial force toward the south. I hope I've left enough. I got so many generals sitting here that I don't need at the moment. I hope I've left enough to kind of defend Washington. I think I have. All right, so Grant made his crossing of the Mississippi. McClellan's back at it once again against Earl Van Dorn, and this is going to be a pretty significant battle here. Again, I don't know why it keeps showing so few men. It's like McClellan only engages a tiny bit of his force against the entire Confederate Army. I don't understand what's happening. I'm going to have to probably replace McClellan. I don't know if that's something to do with him as a general. that such a tiny force ends up getting engaged every time. But here we go. Lew Wallace taking on, looks like James Longstreet. I think that's who that is. I know I said I was going to sit tight with my Virginia Army, but when I saw what a massive force I actually had in those 2 corps, plus McDowell's personal troops that he's commanding, I thought I had to move south. So we're gonna take it slow though, and we're gonna make sure we keep our supply lines going at all times whenever possible. So that must have just been kind of the preview, because now it's allowing me to plan the battle. You can see I've got a major advantage in terms of power. So what I think I want to do is I'm actually going to choose this one, for infantry mass deployment. You can see what an advantage I've got. So that's really what I want to do, is just really take it to him as much as possible. And I don't know why it's not letting me do that. Oh, I guess once I choose one of those deployments, then I have to choose a battle plan based on that. I don't know that I want to do a charge. Maybe we'll do a balanced battle plan. Let's see how that goes. 50,000 men against Longstreet's 15,000. I ought to be able to win that one handily. There was an initial action with just 20-some thousand men under Lew Wallace, and that actually did not go well. I lost a lot of men there. So we'll see. That's probably a separate battle. All right, let's take a look at the result of all these things. You can see we've taken Fredericksburg, or nearly so. Fredericksburg's actually in the territory that we're occupying. But I want to see what the result was of all those combats. So let's start here. Spotsylvania, Virginia. There we go. We had nearly 90,000 men that moved south and won the Battle of Fredericksburg. We lost 5,000 infantry along with 1,200 cavalry and 15 guns. But man, just what a massive force we've got moving now that everybody kind of got refit and ready to go. Exchange of prisoner agreement. That's fine. Not a problem. I don't mind exchanging prisoners right now. The Medal of Honor has been authorized. Initially, it was given out a lot. If you captured a flag, you got the Medal of Honor. In fact, the majority of Medals of Honor from the Civil War, that's what they were, was from the capture of flags. Later on, I think in the 1890s, they went back and reviewed those and actually rescinded a lot of those Medals of Honor. There's the one I was talking about, where Lew Wallace got there first, even though I had a synchronized movement. And you can see the significant amount of losses he suffered, in taking on Longstreet by himself, but then we overwhelmed Longstreet later on. Victory at Fort Larned against William Quantrill's raiders. We had a defeat with McClellan against Earl Van Dorn. Van Dorn's actually got more men, significantly more cavalry than McClellan does, so we're going to have to load that army up a little more, I guess. Grant wiped out the Columbus, Kentucky militia in his crossing, and so now he's on the other side. We've got to get the rest of these forces over here, and then we're going to start moving towards Fort Henry. I think that's going to be our first attack goal there, and then a victory at the Battle of Fort Scott. So looking at the situation now, losses are pretty comparable on either side, and that's great. If I can keep losses comparable on each side, that's a victory for me. Because the Confederates don't have the manpower or the resources to sustain that. Morale, our national morale is 90. His is at 98, so that gap is actually closed. He had more of a difference in morale on me than that. Now, victory point total still going up more for him than it is for me. That's not a huge deal, though, especially since we're on our way to Richmond. So we'll take this another couple of turns, I think, and then we're going to wrap up this episode. What I'm trying to do here, you can see the Army of Northern Virginia is actually up there in Allegheny County, Maryland, moving into southern Pennsylvania. But I'm not too incredibly concerned about that. And he's got a force here under Theophilus Holmes that has moved against me as well. But yeah, again, I'm not going to worry about that a whole lot because I've made my move toward Richmond, and he doesn't seem to have a lot to be able to stop me. I am going to kind of sit tight a little bit here. Look at the supply situation. We are supplied in Fredericksburg, but he could easily cut me off. So I'm a little concerned about that. I'm going to have to probably move some troops into Alexandria. So you can see now that we reinforced a lot of those units in the east, the number of reinforcements we need has gone down significantly, which is a good thing. So my big concern right now, of course, is right up in here as I try to make an advance on Richmond, but we're going to sit tight here in Spotsylvania for at least one turn. I'm going to go ahead and advance into early August, and then we're going to, I think, wrap up right there. So let's go ahead and see what happens. All right, looks like some combat happening up here in Pennsylvania. I did see what looked like Beauregard's army moving by rail. I think he's probably pulling them back to try and go down and defend Richmond, would be my guess. Okay, so I think I may have seen a battle happen at Gettysburg. Let's take a look. Adams County, PA, that's Gettysburg. Union defeated the Battle of Gettysburg, a much smaller affair and about a year early. But Theophilus Holmes, the good news is if we can keep inflicting casualties on him, he can't sustain what he's doing up here in Pennsylvania. So I'm not too worried about that, especially since I've got such a decent force here. You can see the force that I've got. Now, they are significantly smaller in terms of power. Their power's been cut by half. So I don't know if that's an issue of supply, but you can kind of see, I'm not sure what the blue number is there. So average cohesion right now, I'm looking at supply. They are in supply, so that's good. They've got a decent amount of ammo. So that's where things stand right now. Let me know your thoughts, because I know there's a lot happening right now. I would really like to consolidate these two forces, but I think right now my best bet may be to try and reinforce Hamilton's detachment there if I can with some of the new units that are being recruited. Over here in the Western Theater, let's take a look at the situation. A decent-sized force appears to be threatening Cincinnati. I don't know how I feel about that. You can see the main contingent here. We've continued to have Earl Van Dorn threatening me in Harrison County, Indiana, in that area, but we are starting to move toward Fort Donelson. Looks like Don Carlos Buell is there with Grant's Corps. So I don't know if we are besieging Fort Donelson or not. Let's kind of take a look at that situation. Well, that'd be Fort Henry. Fort Donelson would be, I guess, not showing up here. But it appears we took it, I guess. It doesn't appear to have been a siege situation because the American flag is flying. So we've taken Fort Henry. So I guess we could move across over here now to the other side of the Tennessee River and take that, and then we'll start moving south, and we'll move toward Decatur. This would be the area kind of where Shiloh was. So that's the situation right there. We seem to be largely unopposed. I'm hoping this movement kind of pulls some of the Confederate units up here away. I don't think he can counter both of those at the same time. At least I don't think so. But I guess we'll find out. So let me know your thoughts about all of that. There's a lot going on, and I don't know if I'm in a good situation or not at the moment. I feel like I probably am, but I guess we'll find out. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you again in a couple of days.